All right, so are you ready to dive deep into atomic habits today?
Absolutely. I'm excited to break down James Clear's work and, really see how it can apply to our lives.
Yeah, his book is packed with insights, but I think what's really compelling is how he kind of embodies this philosophy himself, right?
Oh, totally. He doesn't just talk the talk, right? He's actually lived it.
Exactly. Like his story after that baseball accident in high school,
Oh, yeah.
it's incredible. He had to relearn how to walk and everything, and then he still managed to become an academic All-American. I mean,
Yeah.
that must have taken some serious dedication to like those tiny gains day after day.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, that's where this whole idea of compounding comes in, right?
Yeah.
It's like investing money. Those small, consistent deposits over time, they can lead to huge growth,
I like that analogy. So it's not about those like massive overnight changes.
right?
It's about the consistency.
It's the little things that add up over time.
Yeah.
Clear uses the bamboo analogy.
Yep.
It spends years, establishing a strong root system underground.
Right.
And then all of a sudden it just shoots up.
Wow. So, okay, applying that to like personal growth though,
Yeah?
does this compounding principle work the same way across the board?
That's a great question. And like whether it's learning a new skill or building a business or even,
Yeah.
improving our relationships.
It really does. It's a universal principle, I think.
Wow.
Whether you're talking about, mastering a language or writing a book or even, deepening a connection with someone.
Right?
It's those small, consistent actions that compound over time to create something really remarkable.
So give me an example, though.
Okay, so imagine practicing a musical instrument,
Okay.
just 15 minutes each day.
Okay.
It might not seem like much in the moment,
Right.
but over months and years,
Yeah.
those 15 minutes, they accumulate. And you reach a level of proficiency you might never have thought possible.
That makes it a lot less intimidating, too.
Yeah.
It's not about those huge leaps, right?
Exactly. It's those small, consistent steps.
And Clear, he gives us a framework for actually doing that.
Okay.
He breaks down habit formation into 4 stages: cue, craving response, and reward.
Let's break those down because I remember reading about them, but honestly, I could use a refresher.
Of course.
Ah.
So let's say you want to build a habit of drinking more water.
Okay.
The cue could be something as simple as keeping a full water bottle on your desk,
Okay.
right? So you see it. It's a visual reminder.
Yeah.
And that triggers the craving,
Okay.
which is your body's desire for hydration.
Right.
The response is actually reaching for the bottle and taking a sip.
Okay.
And the reward, of course, is that feeling of refreshment, quenching your thirst.
So it's like a chain reaction then.
It is.
But if one link in the chain is weak, then the habit's less likely to stick.
Exactly. If you don't have a clear cue, you might not even think about the habit.
Right.
If the craving isn't strong enough, you won't be motivated to act.
Yeah.
And if the reward isn't satisfying, you're less likely to repeat the behavior.
So understanding those stages is key. But
Yeah.
how do we become more aware of the habits we already have?
Right.
Especially the ones that might be holding us back.
Clear suggests a tool called the Habits Scorecard,
Oh.
which is really just about taking inventory of your existing habits and honestly assessing,
Okay.
are they helping you or hurting you?
Can you give me a concrete example of how this habit scorecard actually works?
Sure. Imagine you're trying to eat healthier.
No.
Write down everything you eat for a week.
Yeah.
Then next to each item,
Yeah.
put a plus sign if it's healthy,
Okay.
a minus sign if it's not,
Got it.
and an equal sign if it's neutral.
That's a really simple way to bring awareness to your eating patterns.
It
I'd be
is.
surprised by what you discover.
Exactly.
It's like those little choices we make throughout the day that we don't even realize.
Right, they add up.
Yeah, they do. Okay, so speaking of conscious choices, Clear talks about this technique used by Japanese railway conductors called point and call. What's that all about? How does that even tie into habit change?
Well, it might sound a little unusual,
It does.
but it's incredibly effective. So these conductors,
Yeah?
they literally point at signals and call out commands as they do their safety checks.
Okay.
This forces them to be completely present
Right.
and eliminates the risk of errors,
Right.
from being on autopilot.
So how do we apply this to everyday life?
It's about bringing that same level of conscious awareness to our own habits.
Okay.
So, for example, if you're trying to break the habit of mindlessly scrolling on your phone before bed,
Oh, yeah, guilty.
try verbally saying, I'm putting my phone down now to get a good night's sleep.
So you're saying it out loud?
Yeah.
Okay.
That simple act of verbalizing your actions can make a big difference.
Wow. So it's about taking back control then.
It is. We're not just passively letting our habits dictate our actions.
Right.
We're actively choosing how we spend our time and energy.
And that brings us to the role of our environment.
Absolutely.
I've always believed that our surroundings have a huge impact on our behavior.
Oh, they do.
But I'd love to hear what Clear has to say about this.
Well, he highlights this fascinating study that was done in the cafeteria of Massachusetts General Hospital.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So the researchers, they just rearranged the food displays.
Okay.
They made healthier options more prominent
Okay.
and more accessible.
Got it.
And guess what happened?
I'm guessing people started making healthier choices.
They did.
It can't be that simple. It can. It really underscores the power of visual cues and convenience.
So if you want to eat healthier,
Yeah?
make healthy food more visible.
Yes, make it easy, make it convenient.
So you're setting yourself up for success.
Exactly. You're making it easier to choose the good habit over the bad one.
I like that. This is making me think about my workspace.
Uh-oh.
I've got papers everywhere, half-finished projects.
Yeah.
No wonder I struggle to focus.
Sounds like you need an environment makeover.
Yeah, I think I do.
Yeah.
Maybe add a plant or something.
That could help. Okay, but let's say you've optimized your environment, you're aware of your habits, and you're ready to start building new positive ones.
Okay.
Where do you even begin?
This is where one of Clear's most popular strategies comes in the 2-minute rule.
I've heard of that.
Tell me more.
Okay, so it's all about removing the barriers to starting a new habit.
Okay.
So the idea is to break down any habit, no matter how complex, into a 2-minute version.
Okay.
So instead of exercise for an hour, it becomes put on my workout clothes.
Oh, I like that.
Instead of write a chapter, it's open my laptop and write one sentence.
That's brilliant because it makes those initial steps so easy.
Exactly. You can't not do them.
Right. But what happens after those 2 minutes?
That's the genius of it. You've overcome that initial inertia,
Okay.
and you're more likely to keep going. You put on your workout clothes, you might as well do a few stretches,
Yeah.
you write that one sentence, and suddenly you have a paragraph flowing.
It's like those times when you're dreading a task, but once you get started,
Yeah.
you realize it wasn't that bad.
Okay, I'm definitely going to try that. But how about staying on track?
Right.
Starting a new habit is one thing,
Yeah.
but maintaining it over time,
That's the real challenge.
that's where things get tricky.
That's where habit tracking comes in.
Okay, I've tried that before with mixed results.
Yeah.
Sometimes it works great, other times not so much.
The key is to find a method that works for you and makes the process enjoyable.
Okay, so what are some of the benefits of habit tracking? Because sometimes it feels like just another thing to add to my to-do list.
Well, it's about making the process more engaging and rewarding.
Okay.
First, it provides visual evidence of your progress. You see those streaks building up.
Yeah.
It can be incredibly motivating.
Right.
Second, it helps you identify patterns in your behavior, and areas where you might be struggling.
Oh, okay.
And third, it creates a sense of accountability. You have to mark off your progress each day.
It's like having a silent accountability partner.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about environment, the 2-minute rule, habit tracking.
Yeah.
What other factors can help us build good habits that really stick?
Well, this is where the social aspect comes into play.
Okay.
We are social creatures after all.
Yeah.
Our habits are heavily influenced by the people around us.
Right, so we tend to adopt the habits of our social groups.
We do.
So if we surround ourselves with people who already embody the habits we want to build,
Exact.
that could be a powerful strategy.
It makes the habit seem more normal and attainable.
But let's be real, it's not always feasible to completely change our social circles overnight.
Right.
What do we do in those situations?
Even small changes can make a difference.
Okay.
Join online communities. Follow inspiring individuals on social media.
Got it.
Seek out mentors who embody the habits you want to cultivate.
So actively seeking out those positive influences.
Yes.
That makes sense. And that brings us to another important element, making those good habits satisfying.
Oh, yeah.
Because let's face it, some habits, even the ones we know, are good for us.
Yeah.
They don't always feel enjoyable in the moment.
That's true. Our brains are wired to prioritize instant gratification.
Right?
So the key is to find ways to add a little bit of immediate pleasure to those habits that pay off in the long run.
Okay, can you give me some examples of how to do that?
Sure. So one effective strategy is to pair a habit you want to build
Yeah.
with an activity you already enjoy.
Okay.
For example, if you want to start reading more, but you find it hard to sit still,
Right.
try listening to audiobooks while you walk or do chores.
Oh, I like that.
If you want to make exercise more enjoyable, listen to your favorite podcast
Okay.
or create a playlist of upbeat music.
So you're making those healthy habits less of a chore and more of a treat.
Exactly.
And what about rewards?
Rewards are powerful. Remember the couple saving for their trip to Europe?
Oh, yeah.
Every time they skipped eating out, they
Yes.
transferred money to their trip to Europe savings account.
I love that. It's like a visual reminder of their goal.
It is. It made the act of saving more enjoyable.
Okay, so it's about finding those small wins that keep us motivated.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be something big or expensive.
Right.
It could be as simple as, treating yourself to a relaxing bath after a long day.
Yeah,
Or buying yourself a new book after you finish reading one.
I like that. And that brings us to another concept, the Goldilocks rule.
Ah,
Yes.
what's that all about?
So it's the idea that tasks need to be just challenging enough to keep us engaged.
Okay.
If a task is too easy, we get bored.
Right.
If it's too difficult, we get discouraged.
So that makes sense.
The sweet spot is finding that Goldilocks zone,
Okay.
where you're challenged just enough to enter a flow state.
So it's like finding that perfect balance between stretching ourselves without overwhelming ourselves.
Exactly.
And this applies to any area of our lives.
It does.
Work, relationships, personal growth.
Absolutely.
I think we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive into atomic habits.
We have?
We've explored those 4 stages of habit formation, the importance of environment,
Yeah.
the power of the 2-minute rule.
Habit tracking, social influence.
It's all connected.
It really is. And before we wrap up this part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear your thoughts on something Clear emphasizes. Showing up even when you don't feel like it.
Yes, the discipline piece.
That's something I personally struggle with.
Yeah.
How do we overcome those days when motivation is low
That's a great question.
and distractions are high?
And it's something we'll be diving into in the next part of our exploration.
I can't wait. This has been incredibly insightful. I'm already feeling inspired to revamp my habits.
I am too.
But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear your thoughts on something Clear emphasizes, showing up even when you don't feel like it.
Yes, the discipline piece.
That's something I personally struggle with.
Yeah.
How do we overcome those days when motivation is low
That's a great question.
and distractions are high?
It's something we'll be diving into in the next part of our exploration.
I can't wait. It's clear that building good habits is a journey, not a destination. And I'm excited to continue this journey with you and our listeners. Until next time, keep those tiny gains coming.
I'll be here. Welcome back. It's interesting to think that even when we know all this stuff about building good habits,
Right.
sometimes the hardest part is breaking the bad ones.
It's true. Those bad habits, they're sneaky.
They are.
They creep back in even when we're trying so hard to get rid of them.
Yeah, it's like they have a mind of their own.
They do. So where do we even start? How do we make those bad habits less appealing?
One of the most effective strategies that Clear suggests is to make them harder to do.
Okay.
Increase the friction, as he calls it.
I like that. Give me an example.
Okay. Let's say you're trying to stop snacking late at night.
Oh, yeah.
You know those cravings that hit after dinner?
Oh, tell me about it. I'm a total sucker for ice cream before bed.
Right. So what if you put all those tempting treats out of sight?
Okay.
Maybe in a high cupboard or even a separate room.
Okay.
Now, when those cravings hit, you have to really go out of your way to get to them.
So it's like you're creating a little obstacle course.
Exactly. You're
Yeah.
adding that extra layer of friction.
Okay, but what about habits that are harder to avoid?
Yeah.
Like spending too much time on social media.
Yes. Technology.
Yeah.
It's a blessing and a curse, right?
It is. I've lost count of how many hours I've wasted scrolling through Instagram.
Well, Clear talks about using technology to our advantage.
Okay.
Things like website blockers and app timers.
Right.
They can help us set boundaries and limit our exposure to those temptations.
So it's about using technology intentionally then.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about creating a digital environment that supports our goals instead of sabotaging them.
I like that. And this brings us to something that I found really fascinating in the book,
Yeah,
the power of identity.
absolutely.
It's not just about changing our behaviors.
Right.
It's about changing our beliefs about ourselves.
It's a fundamental shift.
Yeah, so how do we do that? How do we rewrite those beliefs?
Well, it starts with becoming aware of the stories we're telling ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
What are those limiting beliefs that are holding you back?
So like those negative thoughts.
Yeah. Once you've identified them,
Yeah.
you can start to challenge them and choose a new story.
It's like affirmations, right?
There's an element of that.
Yeah.
It's about aligning your self-talk with your desired identity.
Okay, so if you want to be a runner, you start telling yourself, I am a runner.
Exactly. And the amazing thing is, as you start to act in accordance with that new identity,
Yeah.
the evidence starts to build and the belief gets stronger.
It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy then.
It is. If you believe you're capable of something,
Right.
you're more likely to take actions that support that belief.
And you achieve the outcome you desire.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a powerful cycle.
Yeah.
So it's not just about willpower or discipline.
Right.
It's about aligning your actions with your beliefs.
I like that. But let's not forget about the role of emotions.
Oh, emotions are huge.
How many times have I let a feeling of overwhelm or laziness
Right.
totally derail my best intentions?
We've all been there. It's like our rational mind knows what to do,
Yeah.
but our emotional brain takes over.
Yeah. It says, let's just watch Netflix.
Exactly.
Oh.
And that's why it's so important to understand how our brains respond to rewards.
Okay.
We're naturally drawn to instant gratification,
Right.
even if it means sacrificing long-term goals.
It's like that marshmallow experiment.
Oh, yeah. The kids who could delay gratification, they ended up having better outcomes later in life.
But it's not easy to resist that marshmallow in the moment.
It's not.
Yeah.
So Clear suggests adding a little bit of immediate pleasure to the habits that pay off in the long run,
Okay.
and a little bit of immediate pain to those that don't.
So give me an example. How do we actually do that?
Okay, let's say you're trying to save money, but you struggle with impulse purchases.
Oh, yeah, all the time.
So one way to add pain to that bad habit
Okay.
is to implement a 24-hour waiting period before any non-essential purchase.
Oh, that's smart.
It gives you time to cool off
Right.
and really think about whether you need that item.
So it's like a pause button? Okay. And how about adding pleasure to good habits?
Well, remember the couple saving for their trip to Europe?
Yeah.
Every time they skipped eating out, they transferred money to their trip to Europe account.
Right. They linked the act of saving with that future reward.
Exactly. They made it enjoyable.
I love that.
Yeah.
So we're kind of playing a little mental game with ourselves.
We are. We're making those good habits more appealing and those bad habits less so.
Okay.
Mm.
But even with the best strategies in place, we
Yeah.
all have those days when motivation is low.
We do.
And we just don't want to do the thing.
What happens then?
That's when I tend to fall off track.
That's where the power of reflection comes in.
Okay.
Clear emphasizes the importance of regularly reviewing your habits,
Okay.
tracking your progress, and making adjustments.
So it's not just about setting a goal and going for it.
It's about being flexible,
Right.
adapting along the way.
So we're like our own habit coach then.
We are. We're constantly experimenting,
Yeah.
learning, and evolving.
And that brings us to another key element, continuous improvement.
Yes.
This is where we go from good to great, right?
Exactly. And that's what we'll be exploring in the final part of our deep dive.
Welcome back to our deep dive into atomic habits. We've covered a lot of ground already,
We have.
but I'm really excited for this part.
Me too.
How do we take those habits we've built and refine them?
Right.
How do we go from good to exceptional?
That's where this idea of continuous improvement comes in.
Okay.
It's not enough to just, establish those good habits.
Yeah.
We need a system for making them even better over time.
So I'm thinking about this like training for a marathon.
Yeah.
You don't just run the same distance every day.
Right.
You gradually increase your mileage, you vary your workouts, you got to fine-tune your strategy.
Exactly. You're constantly pushing yourself to improve.
So how do we apply that same principle to our habits?
Well, Claire talks about this concept called habit shaping,
Okay.
where you start with a very simple version of the habit and then gradually increase the difficulty or complexity over time.
So it's like the 2-minute rule, but in reverse?
It is. You start small to build momentum, and then you slowly expand the habit.
So give me an example.
Okay, so let's say you're trying to build a writing habit.
Okay.
You might start by committing to write for just 5 minutes each day.
Okay.
Once that feels comfortable, you bump it up to 10 minutes, then 15, and so on.
So you're making these tiny increases
Yeah.
that they almost feel effortless.
Exactly. You're challenging yourself, but not overwhelming yourself.
But how do you know when it's time to level up?
That's where reflection is so important.
Okay.
Clear suggests, regularly reviewing your habits, tracking your progress, and asking yourself some key questions.
Like what kind of questions?
Well, are you still feeling challenged?
Okay.
Are you still making progress?
Got it.
Or have you hit a plateau?
So if a habit is starting to feel too easy,
Yeah,
it's time to introduce a new challenge.
exactly. It's about finding that balance between consistency and variety.
So we need that routine
Yeah.
to build momentum.
But we also need to keep things interesting.
Right. So we don't get bored.
And remember, there's no one-size-fits-all approach.
Right. What works for me might not work for you.
Exactly. It's about experimenting and finding what works best for you.
I love this idea of habit shaping.
Yeah.
It's about seeing our habits as things that can change and evolve.
They're not set in stone.
Exactly. But let's be real, even with the best strategies,
Yeah.
There are going to be days when we just don't feel like showing up.
Absolutely.
How do we deal with that?
Well, that's where discipline comes in.
Okay.
Clear talks about the difference between professionals and amateurs.
Okay.
Professionals stick to their schedule even when they don't feel like it.
Okay.
They know that consistency is key.
Right.
Amateurs let their emotions dictate their actions.
So it's about showing up for ourselves,
It is.
even when it's hard.
Even when you'd rather be doing something else.
But how do we do that?
Well, it goes back to identity. If you see yourself as someone who's committed to their goals,
Okay.
you're more likely to act in alignment with that belief.
It's about building that self-trust.
Exactly.
But sometimes we get stuck in a rut.
Yeah.
You know, we keep repeating the same habits even when they're not serving us anymore.
It happens to all of us.
So how do we know when it's time to break free from those patterns?
It's about recognizing that we're constantly changing and evolving,
Right.
and our habits need to reflect that growth.
So if a habit's no longer serving you,
Yeah,
it's time to let it go.
exactly.
And
And embrace a new way of being.
this has been such an incredible deep dive into atomic habits.
It has been.
We've explored so many strategies for building those good habits, breaking the bad ones, and creating a life that we love.
I think we've given our listeners a lot to think about.
Definitely. So as we wrap up this episode, what's one key takeaway you hope our listeners will remember?
I think the most important thing is to remember that small changes consistently applied over time, they can lead to amazing results.
It's not about those overnight transformations.
No, it's a journey.
It's about understanding the science of habit formation
Yeah.
and using it to create a life that we're proud of.
A life that feels good.
Yes. So as we end our deep dive into atomic habits, I have a question for our listeners.
Okay.
If there's one area where you can make a small change today that could have a positive impact on your life, what would it be? That's something to think about. Until next time, keep those tiny gains coming, and remember, you have the power to transform your life.
You do.